Well, friends, it's that time again. We are back here on the podcast, and today I've got a very interesting voice that you're going to hear from that's at the forefront of the innovation that we are seeing in the church. I've got Steele Billings. Welcome to the show, Steele. How are you doing?
Thanks, Kenny. It's good to see you again, friend.
I'm looking forward to this conversation because I don't think across all of my conversations with leaders at conferences and across the country, I don't think we have enough exposure to the organizations and the people that are trying to do the initiatives at the forefront. And I think we need to have more of these conversations with you because every time I sit down with you, it's been super interesting because and the topic changes continuously. But let's zoom out for a little bit. Why don't you share with us? You're part of the Gloo organization. What do you do? What is your role and responsibilities at the organization?
Well, what day is it? Gloo's well known for just doing a lot. And we have a number of initiatives that are going on, whether it is State of the Church or, our Gloo app and our Gloo products, where we have about 80,000 churches that have signed up and are using various parts of that, texting, all sorts of things. And so I've been around Gloo for 6 years now and have had the pleasure of being a part of a lot of these types of initiatives. Today, I sit as the Chief AI Officer, where I oversee the development of our AI products, our solutions, and head up our AI research, including partnerships and helping think through just, what are the apps that we need to be building for churches? What are the apps that are being built for churches that would be served by, some of the infrastructure that we build? And what are the big questions around artificial intelligence that people are asking that we could be driving forward research on, including relationships with our friends at Barna, who are doing a great job, leading on that front.
There's again, I think you're right. In the constellation of Gloo, there's so many things that are initiatives that I see that are trying to push everything forward. And in the mission of the organization, you hear this term collective might. Can you share a little bit about, what is the end goal for all of these sometimes seemingly disparate projects, but I do see there's continuity in what the objective is. And then also, like, how does AI play into helping meet those objectives of this, harnessing the collective might?
Yeah, so we have a saying at Gloo that, one of the objectives we have is to release the collective might of the church. And, when we say the word church there, and oftentimes Gloo is running in a lot of circles. We hang out with big tech organizations that, come from the West Coast. We hang out with a lot of large financial organizations that, we find a lot of faith-led individuals in. And so we're always looking for those individuals that are really convicted by their faith to live out those convictions in the way that they work and in the organizations that they lead. And Gloo's been around a lot of those organizations for quite a while. Our primary focus has always been and continues to be the church leader, and how do we think about that localized church leader. But as we start to map all of the different organizations that evolve around the local church and the jobs to be done within that church, we start to identify the parachurch ministries and the marketplace leaders that are involved in your church, maybe as a donor or just kind of maybe they're vendors to your church. There's counseling organizations. There's city networks that your church maybe gets often asked to be a part of, or your church leans into, or in many cases your church starts, right? There's a great for movement that's out there, and we've seen a lot of churches adopt that for movement. And there's other city examples that you would bring into your local church. That's the big C church at work, right? And everybody's collectively trying to get to a common objective. And in the world of our faith, it is to lead more people to Jesus. Ultimately is like our calling, right? That's the Great Commission. And so how do we release the collective might of the big C church is what we often say. So collectively, everybody that participates in that. And we have our founder, Scott Beck, has a very unique experience. He's been a part of a lot of major organizations, and across all of those organizations, he would tell you that there's very common threads. And that is that he has existed to put an infrastructure underneath industry so that they could benefit from their scale. And he did that in the home video industry with Blockbuster, where he created Blockbuster into what the world knew it as. the way he did that is he went to the localized versions of, family video stores, mom and pop stores, and said, what are you trying to achieve? Oh, you're trying to achieve X, Y, and Z. Somebody down the street is also trying to achieve X, Y, and Z. You call yourselves competitors. You're actually constraining yourselves by calling yourselves competitors and, not benefiting from the collective might of you guys working together. And so, he created this concept where Blockbuster goes in and unites those efforts, and they get to be served by one another. And collectively, it rises the tide for all ships. And in the Big C church, like if that can happen in the home video industry, like why can't that happen in the local church, right? Where we don't necessarily see ourselves as competitors. At least if somebody asked me, we wouldn't see ourselves as competitors. Oftentimes, subliminally we act on that. So for us, it's releasing the collective mind of the church means that we all benefit from certain actions. And so maybe it's certain infrastructures that we think about. Maybe it's common ad campaigns that we work together on. Maybe it's putting together shared statements or action plans like we just saw with our friends at Lausanne over in Seoul. Yeah, that's really what we're talking about there.
I love it. So that's how we should be operating with each other, right, across the kingdom ecosystem. Artificial intelligence has come and has basically taken the world by storm. How does AI play into building the infrastructure that releases that collective might of that church?
Well, our approach to AI is very specific right now. We think about all the different types of data in the world, and we've been working on a project at Gloo for the last several years called Data Exchange. Other people know it as Gloo Exchange, but it is just that we were talking about collective might. It's a common infrastructure underneath the ecosystem. And when we think about all the things that need to happen to connect, the systems that churches use on a regular basis so that they can, work together, they can share data appropriately and safely. Right now there's a little bit of the Wild West going on, and it's not just happening in the church world. It's happening very broadly as it relates to data being shared back and forth. And going through the early 2020s, 2020, 2021, there was a lot of governance that rose up around that,
Right.
of just data flying everywhere. And AI is, to us, this new opportunity where we need to be driving infrastructures, right, that other people can benefit from. We sort of saw it with OpenAI, where OpenAI created ChatGPT, and everybody knows ChatGPT because it's the demonstration app of what's possible on top of their infrastructures. But the really cool thing that's happening with OpenAI is that so many people are just bringing their ideas and building it on top of OpenAI infrastructure. Now, we believe that there are some flaws in the way that big tech is approaching AI, such as the way that they go out and harvest IP and content from certain organizations. They're doing it without consent in many cases. They are training models in a way that you lose control over that IP. And so things like plagiarism and hallucinations happen. And so those are some of the flaws that we're trying to architect around with AI. We'll talk some more about that, I assume, as we go. Yeah. But the biggest thing, Kenny, is that AI just accelerates everything. Everything is faster these days. You're asking a question to maybe it's a ChatGPT, maybe it's Claude, maybe it's Grok, whatever your listeners are using. And in milliseconds, it is referencing millions and millions of words and articles and resources, and it's coming up with some sort of answer. And then the question you have to ask is, do I trust that? And how well does that align with maybe my personal beliefs? How well does that help me get to the objective that I'm trying to get to? And those are some of the principles that we're building around.
So, speaking at conferences, I think this year I was at two dozen or more training events. And I get this question a lot, and I'd love to hear what your response would be. And I'm sure you get it a lot too. The question is like, why does a local church leader or pastor, church staff, why do they need to consider adopting AI now? Like, why not just wait till it all shakes out? Why jump into it and start to learn? Because it feels like it's a heavy lift. There's a large learning curve. Like, why should I, if I'm a local pastor or I'm on church stuff, how is it relevant to me today?
Man, I feel like I should turn the mic and ask you that question, Kenny. You're shouting from the mountains. Yeah. How would you answer that question, maybe?
No, I think from my perspective, I think it is, you have to see what is it like and what your relationship to is it. So is it something like Bitcoin or the VR goggles that we saw that came out and had some rise in the media, but then it turns out to be a fad or it's a very niche technology. I think the one big difference is this is not a niche technology, and that it is playing out even much broader. I think you would agree than what internet was for the world, right? Like, so if you think about like all the websites in the world have to be something that everyone adopts, and a lot of churches were slow to adopt, right? And during COVID, at the very beginning of COVID, one of the larger denominations came to us and said in their district, in their region, they had over 150 churches that had no website, no online giving. And then I think everyone here that's listening today in 2024 can agree, like, wow, you cannot survive without adopting the internet technology or even like online giving. I think that's the same thing that's going to happen with us because I think this technology is so pervasive. It's relevant to all industries and geographies. So I think that's the first thing that starts in that conversation. But I'm sure on your side, you see a lot of hesitation in terms of AI, right? Like that is something that's still very common, especially in church circles.
What's so interesting about just like the AI world compared to the Bitcoin boom
Yeah,
and or just cryptocurrency in
yeah,
general, and even the AR VR world. I mean, I have those Meta goggles that
yeah,
my kid thought that he was climbing a mountain and then
yes,
fell off the mountain virtually, and so fell to the ground. And I did the thing where I had my 65-year-old father go through it, and he was like leaning forward too much and he fell forward,
yeah,
and we all had our laughs, and those were like great nights that we had as a family. And then we all like put them down one day, and we haven't picked them back up in like
yeah,
the last year, right? And there's a value question there, right? And there's a value question that general population ask around cryptocurrency, like, what are we going to do with all of this?
yeah,
Like, what's the true value that we can all derive from it? Artificial intelligence is different. Like, we're all pretty easily able to point to, well, AI is actually helping me do this, and it's valuable. And some of us are using it, maybe on a monthly basis, weekly basis, daily, hourly in some cases. I'm in the Facebook groups. I see people constantly talking about all the things that they're doing with it. It's valuable. So it does feel very different from that sense, right? We see, at Gloo, we're constantly asking ourselves, like, okay, what do we not see today? What's not obvious about artificial intelligence? And so we're constantly trying to fast forward, trying to logically play out where is all of this going. And we were talking before we hit the record button on this, and you can go down some pretty deep rabbit trails, right? Like, you can start to go down to, okay, well, I could see how we get to the iRobot era. I see
yeah,
how we could maybe get to the Terminator era, but maybe let's not go that far. That's like super science fiction. Where does it actually go? The thing that we're watching very closely right now is just how overall sentiment is changing.
mhm,
And so we do a monthly research work with Barna. We've been doing it for about the last year and a half now around AI and faith. And one of the things that is getting ready to hit publish, we were just talking about the press release that's going to go out this week, and it's around how people are starting to feel like they should be polite to their AI models that they're using. And you're like, wow, all right. So it's like 75% of millennials and Gen Xers, or Gen Zers, I'm sorry, believe that they should say thank you, for example, to ChatGPT as they're using it. And you're like, all right, there's a sentiment that's shifting where people are starting to feel like, it's not like they don't feel that they're talking to a human, but they certainly feel that, I'm training something
yeah,
in a
yeah,
specific way. And so therefore I want it to be polite to me, and so I want to teach it to be polite. And maybe it's just naturally, I just am polite and I just say thank you. That's a really interesting shift, right? Another very interesting shift is around how education is starting to shift how people are thinking about artificial intelligence in many different ways, right? For example, this is now published on Barna's website, this research talking about how 42% of people believe that their opinion of AI would be described as concerning, right? Um, After education, whereas before education, 51% of people believe that they would have described their opinion of AI as concerning. So you saw 51% before it's concerning, down to 42% after a very simple educational session. Other areas are like scary, exciting, untrustworthy, constructive, disconnecting people, encouraging. all of those things that were sort of more on the negative side before us, a very simple educational seminar, they shifted into a positive direction, pretty significant shifts right after an educational seminar. So we're starting to see sentiment change around general population. And the reason I think that's important for church leaders to be aware of is because before, if you would have seen AI as like this sci-fi thing or even this potentially dangerous thing, and now general populations, your congregants are starting to shift their sentiment into a more positive direction. You might start thinking more about being prevalent in that conversation, right? Helping guide that conversation a
Yeah.
little bit more instead of sitting on the sidelines.
Yeah, and I think the more people see practical use cases and examples of not your creative imagination, not sci-fi and Hollywood, but see how it actually could affect them in their own context. I think that has been part of the driver of that sentiment change. Now, talking about contextualized AI applications, Gloo has been the host and facilitating an AI and the church hackathon the last 2 years. We just came out of one this fall. It was a fantastic, event with hundreds of leaders from across the country coming in. Can you share with our audience, because many people might not have ever heard of a hackathon. Sometimes hackathons seems so nerdy, like those nerds with the taped glasses and computer science degrees and stuff like that. So tell us about the hackathon and the version that Gloo has been hosting and facilitating.
Well, that was my perception too, was that hackathons are super nerdy,
Yeah.
and it's like, you kind of picture like Revenge of the Nerds a little bit. Everybody's just like the hanging around saying words that nobody really understands. And on some level, it's like, yeah, we love that part of hackathons. We love the fact that we're all talking about some really scientific or really advanced technological things, and it's a really cool part. On the other hand, it's like, how do we create just a really cool experience, high quality, speakers are showing up at this thing, and people are talking about thought leadership, and people are fellowshipping and worshiping at a hackathon. Those are some of the dynamics that we tried to create. Good food, really high quality food at these things. So we worked on that aspect of a hackathon when we launched it over a year ago now. The AI in the Church Hackathon V1 happened in 2023. You've been a part of both. You've been so important to both. We're so thankful for just how you show up at everything that you do. We tell Kenny his number one job at the hackathon is just to smile, and he's like, "How do I not do that? I don't even know how not to do that." But the hackathon, the original idea around the hackathon, how it came to be, was we were watching new AI apps coming online every single day.
Yeah.
And some AI apps were like applauding from the get-go. It was very obvious these were going to be really cool. Others we were concerned about. And then there were others that seemed to be this big gray area where people fell into. And people were asking questions around, like, should I just go scrape every bit of information that I can and build a chatbot around it? But what about, do I have permission to scrape that or not? Should I bring that data set in to the knowledge base of, answering questions? Like, is that a trusted data set, for example? We also saw questions like, we can now write entire sermons and then actually create a face that would deliver that sermon, and a
Right.
human never has to be involved. We saw it happen in Germany. We saw it happen in several. We were like, incredible technology, extremely concerning from just a level of spiritual discernment, right? And so the AI in the Church Hackathon was number one about the responsible development of AI tools that could be put in the hands of church leaders. That was the number one objective of the hackathon. And so it was like, all right, church leaders have jobs to do. How can AI help them do that? How can we be about helping create those technologies in rapid ways from a very responsible perspective?
Um, I think the event itself is unique in the church space, and the question is, how do you multiply this? How do you copy paste this and do this all over the place? And I would even argue that you probably need hackathons for things other than AI that are just about discipleship and pastoral care and all these other things. Like the energy of generosity and creativity that is concentrated in that type of event that was held, I think is just it's fantastic. Now, during the event, it wasn't just about building things. You also assembled a working group that was there with a bunch of leaders which I thought was amazing that it's across the kingdom. It's not in just this one corner of the church. There was Catholic voices in the
Yeah.
room, evangelicals in the room. I think to me that was super valuable. Can you just tell us a little bit about the work of that group?
Yeah, well, the whole point of the working group is to sort of act as a mini hackathon going into the hackathon, where we're hacking toward, guiding lights, not necessarily rules for the hackathon, but certainly just guiding principles that the hackers would come around because we're advancing around a responsible approach to AI. What does that mean, right? That's a really subjective term. And so it's about 20 to 25 individuals who come together for, about half a day before the hackathon officially begins. And these are individuals from several domains like legal and privacy, theological. We have pastors present in the room. We have various church staff represented in the room. We have academics, researchers. So, for instance, this year we had leaders from Carnegie Mellon University, where Jeffrey Hinton invented the neural networks, and many would argue that's where the modern AI infrastructures were invented. In fact, that was a debate in the room where when the person from Carnegie Mellon was introducing themselves, they said, "Yeah, we invented AI." Immediately sitting next to him was Michael Arena at Biola University, who goes, "That's funny. I thought MIT invented AI, or Stanford would probably say that they invented AI, right?" And so you immediately just had these academics starting to debate this, and it was all friendly and it was really fun. But these experts get into the room and we're asking questions. How do we advance AI in ways that glorify God, right? And so this year we broke it down around these concepts of research. We always break into working groups and we're trying to break down, okay, what are the things that we really need to be able to solve? We said things like, how do we educate the church around AI? Kenny, you've been doing such a great job around educating the church. Going back to our very first conversation, right? We said, what is needed when it comes to AI in the church? And the first words out of your mouth, education. People just need to understand what is artificial intelligence, and what are the ethical and appropriate ways to do that. So we said we need to break down, how do we do that? What are the actual jobs to be done? How do we create, the right illustrations, the right PDF documents, the right videos, the right, XYZ. And then we said things like, what are the ethical frameworks? Who's advancing the trust council concept? Gloo's been, working on the trust council for a year and a half. We're not the only ones. There's a lot of great groups doing that. Who's really pulling together the outcomes from those trust councils? Who's building AI and architecting AI in ways that would create sort of alternatives to big tech's approach, right? And so at the hackathon, Gloo announced a number of things that we were doing there. There's other organizations that we know of that are doing things like that. So who's pulling together a unified effort? For example, Hello Bible, now our partners based in France, Eric Sellerier,
Yes, Eric's
his
great.
organization. Eric's great. And then the last one was around, how does the faith ecosystem show up in the global conversations happening around AI, right? The White House just released a really large framework around artificial intelligence, a new framework around it yesterday. For example, who's in the conversations helping to guide those from faith principles, right? We believe the faith ecosystem has a lot to say about artificial intelligence, and we believe the faith ecosystem should be prevalent or present in those conversations. So who's driving that and helping, get to those levels?
Yeah, those are, I think, so super important topics, and I just love the conversations around it. Like one of the things I say to groups is that, hey, in our AI training, your job is not to become the expert at AI right now in the tool or anything that we're training. Your number one job is to start the conversations with other leaders, because we need more discussions, because there's no right or wrong answer and we're all so new to this. So that's the thing I appreciated about that event, that working group there. Now, when we are talking to church leaders across the country, one of the biggest concerns is they're saying they don't want AI to take over their job, their God-given role. The Holy Spirit has given them something that AI can never replace. What do you say to those leaders that has that concern in particular? Like, because they're drawing a line in the sand and saying, I'm not willing to explore what AI offers because that is one, if not the risk that AI is, presenting to their ministry.
And that it's probably the most important question that pastors can be asking
Yeah.
today, right? How do we make sure that we hold at its highest level the primacy of relationship?
Yeah.
And there's a few different types of relationships. There's the congregant to congregant or peer to peer relationship that we want to make sure that we don't disintermediate. In many ways, just the online church concept has somewhat disintermediated that. We need to make sure that we're architecting that correctly, so that we don't disintermediate those relationships. Platforms like Chop that are engaging, the virtual attendees in really thoughtful ways are doing that. There's the us to God relationship that we don't want to disintermediate. There's a whole lot of talk about AI gods coming into existence, right? And we need to make sure that we don't try to architect God out of the equation here. That's the most maybe the most important thing that we should be talking about. But from the congregant to pastor relationship, right? Making sure that somebody isn't getting everything that they need from a chatbot or what they perceive to need from a
Yeah.
chatbot. Let's put it that way. And that pastors always feel just the opportunity to continue to do that shepherd teacher role, right? That they do so well. And so that comes back to the architecture, how we build these AI infrastructures, how we build these AI models. At the same time, it is my belief that AI is the greatest evangelical opportunity of any of our lifetimes. And what I mean by that is that the spread of information is so rapid, and we don't even know what that means yet. The amount of computing power that is being spun up, nuclear islands are being reactivated so that we can develop AI faster, meaning that in the same way that I can ask it a question and it's going out and searching those millions of words that I was just talking about earlier, billions of words, right, in milliseconds and answering my questions, that's only going to speed up, and it's only going to start to infiltrate more and more areas of our lives. And right now, it's our belief that we are acting on the earliest version of the brain of artificial intelligence. If AI is sort of like humans recreating some of the things that God has already perfected, by the way, which is not always a great thing, it's pretty bad. But if artificial intelligence is sort of like that, then we have created the brain. That's the era that we're in. And just like we would need to teach a brain things and train up a brain, there's a little bit of a moment where we need to be training these brains with, faith-based principles. And those are our sermons that we're preaching, the content that we develop that's extra biblical, the Bible itself. That some of the work that we're doing right now is training models around biblical text and extra biblical text. We're trying to find as many sermons as we can to train these models on those sermons and biblical truth. That's the moment that we're in. And so we can't sit it out, right? We doesn't mean that we shouldn't have those concerns. We shouldn't be architecting around those concerns, but we cannot sit artificial intelligence out.
Love that. Now, in my experience with technology and innovation over the years, what I've found is this has been an inflection point in our history of the world, that the script has been flipped. That previously our dreams as innovators, we've always been waiting for technology to catch up to us, right? We have all these dreams, but the tech is janky. It doesn't work. It's not there. A lot of it's missing. But today with AI, tech has outpaced what we've been able to dream up for our ministries and for the church. What's one future forward dream that you would have for us, the local pastor, the church, the communities that are looking for something larger than themselves? So in the next 3 to 5 years, what's one future forward dream that you might have?
Well, one of the cool opportunities that I believe AI presents for us is that it gives us an opportunity to actually reintroduce the world to flourishing. We use that term a lot at Gloo, but for us, flourishing means that you are, at your peak in your faith, in your finances, in your relationships, in your vocation, in your mental and physical health, right, and on and on. And so if you're flourishing, we believe that it's God's design for us to all flourish, by the way. If you're flourishing, then you are on God's plan for your life, is our perspective. And so how do we help people, get reintroduced to God's design for human flourishing? Because we believe God's design for human flourishing is the best design for human flourishing. But that's not often what you find. If you go ask, some of the big tech tools out there, or even the AI tools that exist today, if you go ask those tools some of life's most important questions, you're going to be pointed to very secular resources. And the faith ecosystem sits on some of the most powerful and impactful resources in the world. And so how do we unlock that intellectual property? put the right constraints around it that we need to, because some of the organizations that own that intellectual property, they create their sustainability models around access to that property, whether it sits behind paywalls or, it's a publisher who is selling books with that intellectual property, for example. Churches don't often think about the protection of that IP because they're going like, I preached a sermon, I want everybody to hear about that. So we're like, great, what are the right features and values for a church leader, to participate in this? What are the right features and values for a publisher to participate in this? But the work that we're doing right now is really around unlocking IP, or rather unlocking access to that IP so that we can just get more people interacting with this trusted, impactful content, in hopes that their answers about what do I do about my marriage that feels like it's falling apart, they're going to get an answer that's faith-based, and they're going to go, wow, that's different than what I saw the secular world try to offer me. And so that we get to reintroduce them to God's design for human flourishing, and AI is presenting that opportunity right now.
I love it. I love it that the keyword for this season is trust, right? Like in the disinformation, and we have so much data that is at our fingertips now. And so, I love that. So there's so much more to this conversation. We need to have you back. If someone listening today wanted to learn more about what Gloo is doing in the AI space, what's one practical way for them to learn more, to both either get involved or just get up to speed in terms of appreciation, education, et cetera? Where would we point them to?
Well, Kenny, thanks for asking the question. We have a website, ai.gloo.us. You can learn all of the things that we're doing, all the products that we're developing, the models that we're training, the initiatives that we're leading. Some of the research that we're doing is published on that website. You can pre-register for Aspen, which is sort of like our, think of it as like a faith-based Perplexity or ChatGPT. It's going to be coming out later this year. December is the expected beta release date. And then January, you'll start to hear a lot more about Aspen. You can pre-register for that. That'll be a tool for churches. That'll be a tool for individuals to just go ask life's biggest questions. You can also learn how you can use Data Engine, which Data Engine is a tool that helps get your sermons, get your church's content into a place where you can choose what apps and, models would have access to that. And it talks about things like compensation and other things for publishers to even use. So ai.gloo.us would be a great starting point.
Awesome. And I just know that you are continuously, in your role and even outside of what you do in work, you're consistently meeting with other innovators and voraciously reading and learning about this stuff as well. How can someone connect with you and follow up directly with you? What's the best way to follow you and to connect?
Yeah, find me on LinkedIn. Feel free to send me an email if email's your thing too. You can find me at sbillings@gloo, gloo.us. Love talking with people. Really love understanding people's day to day and like, what are you thinking about? What are you concerned about? But yeah, you can find me LinkedIn or email.
Awesome. And by the way, here's just a shout out for LinkedIn. LinkedIn has become a full-fledged social media network. It's no longer the obligatory resume depository. It is a place that you should be venturing into, and connect with Steele and connect with me too if you're there. Thank you so much, Steele, for joining us today. We got to get you back on the podcast. If you're here with us listening to this conversation, you are interested in a topic that I think is going to have seismic implications, both intended and unintended consequences for the church and also your congregation, your communities, your spheres of influence that you're in. We'd love to hear your questions and also what you're doing on the AI front in terms of the practical, tactical basis, but also in terms of the questions that you are tackling for your organization and beyond. So leave us a comment, let us know. You can email me at kenny@churchtechtoday.com, and we'll consider everything that you throw our way and use that as fodder for upcoming episodes. A lot of the content that we produce at ChurchTechToday.com comes directly from questions and concerns and ideas that are coming from you. So reach out to me, and we look forward to seeing you here on the next episode of the Church Tech Today podcast.